Welcome to the Practice Podcast, a show created by lawyers to help lawyers in life and business without all the complicated lawyer language. Let's welcome Bast Amron founders and your hosts, Jeff Bast and Brett Amron.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Brett.
That was good timing.
We both spoke at the same time.
We did.
How are you feeling this fine? We're recording on a Wednesday. I had to think about it.
I'm a little tired. Had the fortune to go to the Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals last night.
Let's go Cats.
Let's go Cats.
How about
Florida
the Panthers?
That's right.
Florida Panthers. Shout out to all those Panthers. We know that most of the players are big listeners of the Practice Podcast.
Yeah, of course.
Wish them all congratulations.
Sergei Bobrovsky out there for sure
Let's
listening
go,
today.
Bob.
You know,
Yeah, that was fun.
It was
That must have
awesome.
been a blast to be there.
It was great. The 5 a.m. alarm didn't feel so good today.
I might change my question on. So, what's the best sporting event you've ever attended? That's going to be my new question.
Well, yeah. I mean, to me, it's got to go down to any Gator game in Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. I mean, I've been to national championship.
Yeah,
I've been to SEC championships. But that was
You're going to home game over
home games, like the crowd.
Over the national championship. Wow.
Yeah, because the crowd is insane. I mean, national championship was amazing in 2008. I was there. It was here in the Orange Bowl. That was awesome. I've been to a Final Four. That was pretty cool. My team wasn't there, so that wasn't great.
Right.
But I'll say last night
must have been
my
awesome.
God, like that arena was shaking. It was incredible.
NBA Finals too.
Been to NBA Finals. That's right. We had the LeBron years. We were going to a lot of playoff games.
Yeah.
During that time. How about you, Mr. Bast?
Yeah, I'm probably going to go with the national championship. I've attended every Gator football national championship appearance.
You were in 96?
Every time they've ever played in the national championship, including the one in Arizona against Nebraska, where we got slaughtered.
Smoked.
That one we left early, and I just remember every time the Gators scored, and that would be one time, they would light off orange and blue fireworks. And when Nebraska scored, they would light off red and white.
Did they run out? They ran out.
No, I just remember walking through the parking lot and seeing red and white fireworks. It was bad.
They got smoked
but
that
the
year.
one here in Miami.
That was 08. Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
That's right.
Because I had my whole family with me. The kids were with me. And we appeared in the little Gator video that happened. It just happened to pan right across us. So anyway, I just called an audible and changed my question. Is that another one?
Oh, he's
save it for the next time.
Deeper, more intellectual question.
Exactly.
All right, I appreciate that.
All right. Well, I'm excited that we have a special guest today.
We're excited that we have a guest.
And she's also a national champion. No, just kidding.
Well, she might
be. Our
guest
guest today, I don't know. We're going to find out.
We're going to find out.
Our guest today is Elise Holtzman. Elise is a former practicing lawyer. Congratulations on that.
Yeah.
Executive coach, consultant, and she's the CEO of The Lawyer's Edge, where for more than 16 years, she and her team have worked with law firms to grow thriving businesses by helping lawyers become better business developers and leaders. She's the creator of Lawyers Making Rain, a program for law firms, and the Ignite Women's Business Development Accelerator for women partners and counsel. She speaks frequently for law firms and to law firms and bar associations. She's also the host of the Lawyer's Edge podcast.
It's and cross-branding.
Yeah.
That's good.
And she writes articles for publications such as Law.com and Law 360. Before founding The Lawyer's Edge, she practiced law in New York City with Fried Frank and Morgan Lewis. And
heard of those.
Yeah. We're happy to have her here. Welcome, Elise.
Yeah, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
She's questioning right now, like, why?
Why did I do this?
Why?
So do you have a favorite sporting event while we're...
I knew you were going to ask me that. You definitely got the wrong one for that. No, I just actually started learning to play golf. Aside from that was last summer. So I'm enthusiastic, but terrible. As far as going to see sports, I'm more of a major league person if I ever get there. So I think it's fair to say, I've been to a Giant game, a Yankee game, a Knicks game. But other than that, I occasionally watch it on TV, mainly when forced to do so. So I can't say that my enthusiasm for sports matches yours.
Yeah, I've never been to Madison Square Garden for a game. I'd like to go. Have you?
I've seen concerts there.
Yeah.
I've never been to, no, I don't think I have. Yeah. I don't know. I have to think about that. Man, I'm sure I went to a Knicks game at some point when I was in law school. But anyway, all right, Elise. So you're a practicing lawyer. We want to know how did this happen? You practice law at two big firms. Did you say I got to get out out of here. I need to do something else, or what happened? Were you
Basically, what happened was that I loved what I did. I did commercial real estate transactions. And while I realized that for some lawyers, that might be like watching paint dry, for me, it was just fun. I loved doing the deals. And that was back in the day where, we were always in the room together and signing documents in person and all of that sort of thing. So I thought it was really exciting. I wound up leaving the first firm just because the hours were crazy. I also married a big law lawyer. We've been married for, 33 plus years at this point. So
same firm? Is it somebody you met while you're
No.
Together?
We actually met in law school when we were cast to sing a love song together in the law school show. So we had both been, the law school had a spring, like a big show. And then in the fall, they had a smaller show. And I was a 3L and he was a 1L. And that's how we met. So he wound up going to another large firm. And, of course, the hours were crazy and we weren't seeing each other. And I wanted something that was a little bit more reasonable because we thought we would want to start a family. So I went to Morgan Lewis, and as silly as it sounds, it was more reasonable just because the deals at the time, at least, the deals were smaller. There were fewer zeros at the end of them. I was the most senior associate in the practice group. I was running the deals myself. They weren't my clients, but I was running the deals. And it was all great until we had our first baby. And the baby's turning 30 this year. So we're not going to discuss that any further because I really don't know how that happened.
You were 10. You were 10 when you had a child.
Exactly. I was 10. I was, one of those. So I went back part-time. There was really no such thing as part-time back then. They were trying it out. And so I was working it was supposed to be 40 hours a week for 80% of my salary. That was part-time. And I was really working more like 60, 70 hours a week because I was the most senior associate in the practice group. So ultimately, with no background in law, we didn't have lawyers in our family. It was all new to us. We were trying to figure it out. There was no such thing as a coach. There was no such thing as a woman mentor. There really wasn't. And so I just thought, well, I tried this thing and it doesn't work. And in order to save the family, if you will, and have us have the life that we wanted, I decided to step back from it. And that's when we moved from New York City to New Jersey because we actually couldn't afford to live on one salary. We were I was making like 52% of our family income because I was a couple of years ahead of him. So we moved to New Jersey and I started to hold down the fort. I thought maybe I'll do something in New Jersey, but I was home for 10 years. So we have 3 kids.
Right.
I was home for 10 years. And even then, even my kids made fun of me. It was like, mom was born in a suit carrying a briefcase, like, haha, she's a stay-at-home mom, And so we have that conversation, but it made sense for us at the time. It was a little hard to swallow some other time. So I ran every community fundraiser like it was some kind of public offering. Like I was a little bit crazy about those sorts of things. And then I wound up again about, 17 plus years ago, started thinking about what am I going to be when I grow up? And obviously there are law firms in New Jersey and I could have done something there because I did enjoy the practice of law, but I decided that I wanted to do something on my own because I didn't want to turn my life over to a firm. And really all I knew was big law at the time. As silly as it sounds, I was so used to that I looked at the big law firms in New Jersey and thought that's not going to work for me. And our third child has special needs. We don't really have family around. My husband was commuting to this big firm in New York City. So it just made sense for me to find something different. And I did some research and I found out about this thing called coaching. I had heard of life coaching, which didn't really sound like something that I would be particularly interested in. And then I discovered that there was something called leadership coaching, executive coaching. Mm-hmm. And that's when I really got excited about it. So I actually did a full year certificate program in executive coaching and leadership coaching and started my own business. And we actually, depending on if you're a member of the trade organization that regulates the coaching industry, because it's not a licensed profession, right? It's a self-regulated profession. Then there are certain credentials you can apply for. And we have continuing coach education the same way, we as lawyers have CLE. And so that's how I've grown as a coach.
So we hear that a lot, like leadership training and leadership coach. What does that mean? What do you think it means in terms of your role or your focus, especially if you focus on lawyers? And,
right.
And
great question.
And how you got there, right? Why lawyers? I mean, you're a lawyer and you came out of it, but why did you decide, you know what? I think lawyers need, and I'm chuckling because of course we all do, but I think lawyers need leadership training and I'm going to focus on it because it wasn't really a thing back then.
It's in many places, it's not even a thing now, right? So to answer these questions. So first of all, I wound up choosing lawyers because while the coaching education program didn't give us any education on marketing or how to run a business or anything like that, the one thing that they did say stuck in my mind. And that's really been the genesis of so much of what I do, which is that it's really important to have a focus. You can go out into the world and this is for lawyers and anybody else who has a business. You can go out into the world and say, I can sell you my thing that I do and I can do anything for anyone. And then you're not really marketing, right? You're sort of marketing to everybody and everybody can't possibly be your client. So they said, choose a niche of some kind. And I thought, well, I don't really know much about anybody other than lawyers. And God knows that, nobody taught me any of this stuff when I was in law school or when I got to the law firm. So maybe this could be a business. Maybe I could help lawyers thrive and grow in their practices. And so I started doing that. Now, when I started doing it, I didn't come from entrepreneurs, right? My father always was with a company. He was in managerial roles, but always with a company. My mom was a speech language pathologist. She was always with a school system. I didn't have this entrepreneurial bent, but here I was starting my own business. So I started taking some courses and going to conferences having to do with marketing, and purely out of selfishness because I had no idea how to get clients. And I started realizing that I had a knack for it and that I had a knack for teaching other people how to do it and coaching other people how to get clients. So that's where a lot of my business is business development, coaching, and training for lawyers and law firms. And then there's also the leadership piece. So I started moving into those pieces. And as far as the leadership piece of it goes, I think there are two things here, right? There's the business development. So obviously, lawyers and law firms need to bring in clients. Clients are the lifeblood of our businesses when we're lawyers, but nobody bothers teaching us how to find clients. They don't teach us how to serve clients. They don't teach us anything. They give us a foundation in the law, and then they teach us how to think like a lawyer so you can never think like a normal person again. And then they kind of shove you out the door, right? You're supposed to figure the rest of it out yourself. Yeah. So there's the, how do I attract the right clients to the firm? How do I retain my clients? How do I do it without being salesy and icky and uncomfortable? And then there's the leadership piece. You guys are managing this law firm. You founded this law firm. You're managing this law firm. I suspect that nobody ever came to you and said, here's how you do it. This is what it looks like to be a leader. This is how you manage people. So many things come up in the life of a law firm leader. So many things happen when you start ascending into law firm leadership. You're essentially being asked to do a job that you were never prepared for. And in law firms in particular, you're an associate, maybe you're a senior associate, maybe you're counsel, you make junior partner. At some point, somebody looks at you and says, we'd like you to run the law firm. And that often happens in law firms because they look at you and say, wow, you're a really good rainmaker. Clients really like you. You've got your name out there. So what we're going to ask you to do is this other job that has absolutely nothing to do with what you're really good at, which is practicing law and making the phone ring. And so that's where the leadership coaching and training can come in, because what does that look like? I've always ever, just managed myself or a couple of people around me, and I'm not necessarily particularly good at it. What's the difference between being an everyday lawyer and running an organization or running a practice group or running a litigation team or whatever it may be? And so there are so many different skills that are required that we haven't been practicing before that it's important to help make both a mindset shift and a skill shift.
Why do we think that happened in the legal profession? I mean, let's go back for a minute and unpack that. Why? Because I think that lends itself to why it took so long, right, to get to the point where firms now are hiring people like you to give these skills to younger lawyers that eventually will ascend or might ascend to either rainmaking or administrative roles or running the firm. So why did it take so long? I mean, it's still, like you said, it's still not a thing in a lot of places, but I feel like it's getting there, but we don't learn any of this in law. Like you said,
we don't learn anything.
In law school, we don't learn anything in law school.
You don't learn how to practice law. You don't have to learn.
No, you got to teach yourself everything. But like you said, I mean, it teaches you how to think and maybe where to find information.
How to think and write. Yeah.
But that's about it. So,
that's it, right?
Why? Why is it not in the lexicon of law schools and teaching us how to do this stuff?
I think a lot of it has to do with, first of all, how the legal profession started and how we view the legal profession, and also the people that self-select into the legal profession. So first of all, you're talking about a profession where we were considered academics, we were considered technicians, we know the law, we're supposed to be very professional. It's sort of like this very elegant, high-level country club sort of academic glass tower that we live in, right? We're brought in to be the brainiacs and to help other people succeed. Then you've got this idea that, so it's all very professional. And so you hear law schools say things like, well, we're not teaching all of this stuff because after all, we're not a trade school. Well, you kind of are a trade school, right? I mean, people are going out and they're practicing law. And so that's a trade. And so there's often been this accusation for certain law schools that they're really teaching their students to become Supreme Court justices, not to become everyday, on the ground lawyers. And so I think that that's persisted. It's like we have this idea that we're sniff above all this low level business stuff and trying to get clients and all of that it's unseemly and unprofessional. And then you have the idea that law schools do not go to universities and say, hello, State University, we would like to take a cross section of your students to be in our law school class. Instead, people self-select into the law. And the kinds of people that typically self-select into the law are not people that want to go out and be salespeople. They're people that want that academic experience. They want to help other people. They like to noodle through problems and come up with solutions. If they had wanted to become salespeople, they would have gone into sales. And so now you've got this group of people who they're not salesy, they're not business oriented, they're brainiacs. And while the clients may say that's great to a point, right? You've got to be savvy to business and understand how the world works to serve the client these days. But I think it's a long history of just believing that this is this country club profession where all this other stuff is beneath us and we're not expected to learn those things.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I actually have a question from something you said earlier. What was the love song that you and your husband sang in law school?
So it's called Love Song, and it's from the Broadway show Pippin.
There you go. Okay. Anyway.
I just wanted to add to something about that, by the way. Also think about the lawyers are risk averse, right?
Yeah.
So again, we self-select in fairly risk averse. Then we're taught to be risk averse because our jobs is kind of to figure out what could go wrong in the process of trying to help our clients get everything to go right. And so we're risk averse in general. And you hear law firm leaders, I'm sure you've heard other law firm leaders say something along the lines of, oh, well, that sounds like a good idea, but what are our peer institutions doing, right? We're not going to be out in front necessarily. We want to see what the other law firms are doing before we jump in. So we tend to be slow adopters. And I say this with love, but I kind of make fun of my parents in a sense. I feel like lawyers are sort of like my parents, who were probably the last people on the block to get a microwave oven, back in the day when I was a kid. And that's how lawyers are. So I think all of that leads to the risk aversion. Don't be salesy, just do good work, just be the brainiac. And that's why you see that these things take so long to take hold in the legal profession.
I think lawyers are somewhat insular in their approach. Like they think only lawyers know. And the idea of taking advice from non-lawyers, it's just so foreign to them. And there's also this sort of hierarchical mindset where it's like, this is how I graduated up to my level and everyone else should do it that way. It's almost like, doctors and residents, like you should have to go without sleep for 6 years before you become a doctor. And I think lawyers always felt like we figured it out on our own and we did it ourselves and you should do the same thing and follow a protocol. And the idea of taking advice from a non-lawyer or for somebody outside is just, how could they possibly understand our business? I
see that a lot. I mean, I can give you a couple of examples of that. A few years ago in the pandemic, I actually did a program for a bunch of chief marketing officers of law firms. And the program was essentially all about how to influence lawyer leaders to get your messages across to them so they're actually willing to listen to you. Yeah. I mean, imagine law firms, this happens all the time, finally getting around, especially the larger ones, hiring a staff of really, really experienced, knowledgeable marketing professionals, and then not listening to what they say. They say, oh, we have this idea. And somebody says, oh, well, no, we're not going to do that because somehow we're the lawyers and we know better, right? You invested in hiring these people so that they could come in. And yes, it's got to be a conversation, but they show up with the market research. They show up with all the ideas or something along the lines of, we tried that in 1979 and it didn't work, right? Because we're stuck in our ways. And so you do see that a lot.
Yeah. And we're trained to, one, have the answers, to two, sound like we do even when we don't.
Right.
To have the answers. And, when you don't, you better sound like you do.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think law firms and professional services firms alike are unique, right? In terms of different than other businesses, because we don't just create the business, run the business and operate it. We also are in charge of being we're the product. Right? We are the business.
Our time.
Right. And so law school, again, assuming law school teaches you anything, it teaches you about how to be the business, but it doesn't teach you anything else to sort of, run the business, grow the business, set up a business, market yourself, go get clients, all that stuff. Do you see any trends that law schools are actually starting to teach any of this stuff at all?
Very little. Yeah. Very little. I was hoping a long time ago that I would see more of it. I also think that the fancier the law school thinks it is, the less likely they are to do these things. So they will occasionally bring in a speaker. So for example, my daughter, who is, believe it or not, just finished her second year in law school. And no, we didn't encourage it, but she's very happy and excited about it. She said that her law school brought in somebody, for a one-off kind of cocktail party kind of a thing to talk about networking, but they're not giving classes on these things.
Right.
And, to your point, which I think comes up almost all the time for the lawyers I work with, is that there are only so many hours in a day. And you guys know this better than anyone because you're running a law firm. It's like, so you're supposed to practice law. You're supposed to run the law firm. You're supposed to grow and nurture the people that you have there, the associates and the junior people, create a succession plan, have the law firm succeed beyond you. You're supposed to sell the law firm and bring in business. You're supposed to take care of the clients. You're supposed to run the operations. You're supposed to have a strategic plan for the future. It's endless. And so as you pointed out,
I gotta go.
I'm exhausted.
Right.
Right. Really you forgot to record a podcast. You forgot you got to record a podcast.
I need to go.
Anyway, I interrupted you. Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah,
no, there's so much. People come to me and say, you don't understand, Elise, I don't have time for business development. I don't have time to worry about this stuff. And so that very much is something that's different when it comes to professional services firms, whether it's lawyers or all the other folks that you mentioned, architects, engineers, accountants, and doctors. Our businesses are run very differently because in ABC company, they have somebody who designs the widgets, somebody who manufactures the widgets, somebody who markets the widgets, somebody who sells the widgets, someone who does the customer service, somebody else runs the organization. And so we have a lot on our plates and it's a lot to balance, especially when you don't know how to do it.
And not one person that does all of those things. So I'm curious, also backing out, zooming out a little bit, you talked about an organization that certifies coaches.
So there are a couple of them. The primary one and the one that I'm a member of is called the International Coach Federation. So while it was started in the United States, if I'm not mistaken, it's based in Chicago, it is international and it's remarkable. I don't know whether it's like 40,000 or 50,000 coaches internationally from, something like almost every country in the world that come together. And so they accredit training programs and they do all kinds of education and they have credentials that you can earn, that sort of thing.
So is that when you're trained through the International Coach Federation, is it coaching generally or do they provide a law specialty, like coaching related to the law, or how does it work?
So when I took my original training, so just to be clear, they mostly don't do the training themselves. There are private organizations that pop up and some universities have them as well. And they create training programs and then they go to the ICF to get accredited. Right. And so the programs, when I was doing it back in the day, more than 16, 17 years ago, they were largely general. And I think that many of them still are. Now, you can have coaching programs that'll be for honestly, more like life coaching, some that are more business coaching related. But in general, the idea behind coaching is that once you learn the skills and tools of coaching, you can coach anybody. I am aware that there are a couple of organizations now that do specifically train for certain kinds of roles. Like one organization might train for internal coaches. So for example, a law firm or a Fortune 500 company may have internal coaches that they use. And so they're trained to work inside of organizations. Another one, as I say, that I know about trains coaches specifically for working with lawyers. And so there are some of those out there, but a lot of them are general. And then people kind of choose their area after that.
Right. I was wondering if you saw, when you were going through these programs or as you've gone through, are you seeing more people steering towards the legal field? Because I would imagine the majority have some tie to the law. Either they were in law firm administration or they're recovering lawyers like yourself.
You're exactly right. So when I first started, I think, and again, we didn't have all of the video calling and all of that stuff. But when I started, I noticed that there were probably 6 people nationwide that I had heard of that were former practicing lawyers who were moving into coaching. And this guy in Boston actually started a conference call for us. We were all on the phone. and we had a conference call. And now, I mean, it's a little bit crass, but my joke is you can't spit on the subway without hitting a lawyer who became a coach, which, in a lot of ways is great, right? There are a lot of great coaches out there, and certainly it's needed. And there's so many elements of it. I mean, it could just be helping associates learn how to be associates. And it could be leadership. It could be business development. It could be communication skills, which I do a lot of work with as well. So there's certainly a need for it. There are 1.3 million lawyers in the United States, to say nothing of Canada. And so there's a lot of need out there. But yes, there are tremendously more coaches who are serving the legal profession than there were when I got started. And to your point, Jeff, some of them are former practicing lawyers. A lot of them are people who did come out of professional development in law firms or marketing and business development.
Okay. And how'd you get your first client? Was it your husband? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. Yeah, that's like, you're not supposed to operate on your family member if you're a surgeon. And I think the same goes for this. I remember at one point actually referring him to a colleague of mine because there was no way that this was going to do well for us. My first client, it's so funny because this is such a ridiculous story, but my first client that I ever got, I think I was actually getting a pedicure. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. So I think I was getting a pedicure and I spoke to the woman next to me and she actually wasn't a lawyer. I hadn't really made the decision to go, whole hog after the legal profession. And thanks to her, she was actually selling cars. She was actually an automobile salesperson. And so I learned from her that I loved coaching, but that I wanted to work with people where I understood their business, right? I wanted to work with legal professionals. And so that actually helped me. And it's funny, I got my first two clients who were lawyers came around the same time, and they were both just through referrals, just people that I met. I think one through the International Coach Federation and one just through my personal life.
Right.
And do firms also hire you, not just individual lawyers to come in as well?
Yes, exactly. So now, we get most of our clients through law firms, but we do get a lot of individuals reaching out to us as well. Mm-hmm. And I say we because I have a couple. We're a very small group. I have a couple of really fantastic coaches on my team. And so we do both of those. And also I work with a lot of law firms on bringing programming into the law firms on business development, communication, and leadership when they kind of want to turn the light bulb on for people and have them start working on some of these things.
And is it a finite period? I mean, I would imagine it's not a finite period when people hire you for X number of months or years. Maybe it is, or there's a program. How do you know when, or how do they know when it's like, now I'm good. I've hit a point. I'm rolling. Elise has done such a great job. It's time to move on. And maybe there's touch points after that, but maybe not as intense.
Yeah. So the way coaching typically works, and I can tell you how it works with me, is that we do ask people to commit to a certain number of months of coaching, because the things that we're working on, it's not something where you're going to talk to a coach once or twice and go, eureka, I've got it all figured out. And the issue a lot of times is about implementation. Once you have some idea of what you want to do and what direction you're going in, a lot of people struggle with the execution because, of course, they're busy, right? They're billing hours, and, we live and die by the almighty billable hour. Even if you're doing alternate fee arrangements or something like that, it really comes down to efficiency and the hours that you put in. And so what I learned when I first started coaching, they were talking to us about doing 3-month coaching engagements and talking to the client every week. And I pretty quickly figured out that just doesn't work for lawyers. And so what we typically do is we ask people to commit to a 6-month coaching engagement, because almost everybody basically was rolling over into at least a 6-month coaching engagement. And then also talk to them more like every 2 to 3 weeks. So you're giving them enough time in between coaching sessions to take action, to sit down and figure some things out, answer some questions for themselves, conduct mini experiments, see what's working and what isn't working, and then come back and talk about it. But you're not giving them enough time that they lose momentum. And so that is what, for our business, we've come to the conclusion that is what works best. Now, I would say the vast majority of our clients roll over again into a second coaching engagement and at 3 months, I was finding people were going, oh, I get it now. This is how I can make it work. And we were saying, okay, it's the end of the engagement. That didn't work for them. Some of our clients will do 2 engagements, so we'll have them for a year. They're people that I've been working with for years. And once I've been working with them for a long time, maybe we're checking in once a month, once a quarter, that kind of thing, because they like the idea of having that accountability, that check-in. They want to chit-chat about how things have changed for their practice, how their practice has grown, that sort of thing. So in the beginning, it's more like we have a particular way of doing it. And then as we grow with our clients, we can customize the program for for them.
And so as we bring this to a close, who should be calling you right now? I mean, how does a lawyer know that they need
anyone with a law degree?
The lawyer's edge, right? I mean, right. It's right.
Yeah.
But how does somebody know, hey, it's time. I need to call the lawyer's edge.
So we work primarily with private practice lawyers, right? And so, we've had some other clients, but for private practice lawyers, I think it's really important for people, especially in today's world where people move around so much. They don't necessarily stay with the same firm forever, to understand that they have to have a way of taking control over their own careers. And for many private practice lawyers, that means being able to develop your own book of business, being able to have some sort of niche so that you are saleable either inside your own firm or another firm wants to hire you. And what that means is not waiting until you've already made partner, or not waiting until you're suddenly a senior partner and people are wanting to know where your book of business is, to start thinking about how you can start to develop the mindsets and the skills and the behaviors of business developers and leaders. Yeah. So I think that I would say mid-level to senior associates, certainly counsel and junior partners. It can be very overwhelming to go from associate to junior partner. It sometimes takes a junior partner 2 years just to get their land legs because they've gone from the top of one pile, if you will, to the bottom of another pile. The job description is different. And so I think that if you see your job description changing, that's a good time. Well, wait a minute. I'm now supposed to be mentoring and managing other people. I'm a senior associate. This isn't the same as just being an individual contributor anymore. Or the firm has a business development culture and philosophy. I know that in order for you to make partner or to make equity partner, they're going to want to know where my book of business is. Right. Or for me to get any of my decisions through the firm, or for me to have an impact in this firm, I need to be seen as a credible leader. I need to be seen as someone with influence, somebody that they should listen to. I want to build my confidence, my executive presence, and know how to communicate internally so that I can have an impact on this firm's future and my own future, right? I want to increase my compensation, whatever it may be. Those are the times when you're starting to wonder, well, how do I get to this next step? What do I need to do to make it happen? That while you may have some good ideas, it may be helpful for you to have someone to talk it through with, develop a plan, and start executing on the plan. And when you run into challenges, which we all do, right? Everybody runs into roadblocks or challenges, some of which are external to us and some of which we throw up in our own way just because of the ways in which we think and drive ourselves nuts. That may be the time for you to say, hey, maybe I could have somebody who's a coach walk this path with me. Because it's not about the coach coming in and telling you what to do. It's about the coach helping you surface the right issues, make a plan, figure out how to execute on it, and help you clear out the obstacles that are in the way so that you can succeed, whatever that looks like for you, whatever your definition of success is.
How do you define success, Mr. Amron?
At least clearing the obstacles.
That's right.
Yeah,
this is great. Really helpful. Definitely reach out to Elise if you are a lawyer, period. Thank you, Elise. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you.
If you like this show, please leave a review and subscribe.
Thanks, Elise. Appreciate the time.
Thanks so much.
Nelson, as always, thank you. Jeff, it's your pleasure.
It is my pleasure.
For more information on this show and other resources, visit fastamron.com and connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram @FastAmron.